Hey, Stephen. I'm so thrilled for this book because I read it in 2 days and inhaled it. I'm curious from your lens, why is this the book for any woman in business in 2021?
I think first of all, it's not gender specific. I think first of all, it's a book for anybody in business in 2021. First of all, we all got our butt kicked in 2020. It was just a hard year. I think this book, which is nothing more than a blueprint for peak performance that anybody can follow, is exactly how we fight back. So in a short version, I think that's how we fight back. I think it's particularly, it's great for women. Women bring a bunch of things to the peak performance table that are superpowers that people don't talk about. There's a level of emotional self-awareness that is foundational. That level of awareness is foundational to peak performance. Peak performance is nothing more than getting your biology to work for you rather than against you. And those are the internal signals of that biology, whether we want to call it our emotions, our intuitions, whatever it is. Women have a much easier time paying attention to those signals, and as a result, learning a lot of this stuff is actually probably a lot easier for women than men. I think they come into the peak performance game a little ahead in that way, which I think is interesting and maybe a little surprising to people.
Awesome. And given your experience in working with leaders all over the world, what do you envision this book specifically doing or catalyzing?
Well, so there's a bunch of different answers, but one of the things this book has that I haven't done previously, I've written a lot of books on flow. I've never written a how-to book about flow. And the flow, besides being kind of, well, it is optimal performance, right? It is what every human being can get into flow, and flow is how we perform at our best. It's available to everybody, is the first thing to know. The second thing to know is we live in a world that is global and exponential, right? Global meaning if it happens in China and we're living in America, our computers hear about it a millisecond later, we get it a second later. Exponential meaning the rate of change is really, really quick, right? The difference between this week, next week, this month, next week, these can be vast. Our brain, unfortunately, evolved in an environment that was linear and local. Local meaning everything we dealt with was roughly a day's walk away, and linear, the rate of change was really slow. Forget about the difference between like week to week, month to month. In the era that our brain evolved in, your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother's world is the same as her great-great-great-great-granddaughter's world. There's very little change. That's the world the brain evolved in. So most of us are looking at today's world and going, oh my God, I can't keep pace. I can't even think quick enough to keep pace with today's world. And that's not just a feeling, that's actually a biological truth. Your brain cannot do that. Flow is the only time that we can think and process information at speed and at scale. If I would put it more formally, I would say, look, from a scientific perspective, the state of flow and what the neurobiology underpinning it, the mechanism in the brain that produces the state, amplifies every aspect of the information processing chain. We take in more information, pay more attention to that information, find faster connections between it and other ideas, and so forth and so forth. Flow is the only time we get to think at speed and at scale. So if you want to, this is why it was a gender neutral answer. If you want to keep pace in the modern world, this has to be a core part of your toolkit. Women, by the way, getting into the flow game, because you have to sort of have some understanding of what's going on inside of you. For example, one of the first things we always do in training people in flow is, hey, it's a spectrum experience, meaning it's like any emotion. Anger is a spectrum. You can be a little irked, you can be homicidally murderous. It's the same feeling, right? Flow works the same way. There can be a state of microflow, and recognizing you're in microflow, a low-grade flow state, is the fastest way to start turning it into macro flow. And the performance aspects of flow, they're always present in the state, but they get amplified the deeper into the state you get. Women, with some of the self-awareness stuff we've been talking about, sometimes, often, can have an easier time picking up on some of those signals. So they seem to be able to get farther faster on some of this stuff.
Interesting.
So while it's gender neutral,
Yeah.
there are some of the, now women culturally tend to run into slightly different issues. There are, you want to confront fear and you want to take risks, and you want to cherish and notice excitement. these are things that are not always baked into women's culture so much, or haven't been, should be maybe, but that's not my call. I'm just an outside observer on this one. You would actually have to be a woman, I think, to be able to comment learnedly on that particular thing. But my point is, everybody kind of brings in some innate advantages based on kind of your culture and your history, and I think just kind of women in general bring some stuff to the peak performance table that, you know, they pick this stuff up very fast.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like intuition is one of those things that accelerates flow, and women have a gift for intuition.
So creativity,
Yeah.
which is a flow trigger, and when I say creativity, it's insight. When we link two ideas together in a new way, you get a little burst of dopamine that drives focus, and that will drive flow. So to be able to do that, we're taking in often new information that's outside ourselves, that's in the external world, but it's being attached to very quiet, intuitive internal signals. And if you can't recognize those signals, if you're not good at listening to the voice inside, you may be getting the actual insight, but if you don't notice it, you don't get the dopamine. It doesn't work, right? You have to be able to put it together, which means you have to be able to pay attention to those internal signals.
Yeah. I mean, this book I bought 10 copies of, not just for my students, but also for my badass female leaders in my life. And I think this is a book that we've been waiting for. Why did you write this book now at this point in your career?
So, two reasons.
Yeah.
One, people have been wanting me to write a how-to peak performance book since I wrote my first book on flow 20 years ago. And I kept saying, I've said all along, when the science catches up, I will write the book. I always try to follow the science. I always try to follow the research. What has happened is that the neurobiology of human performance has been sort of decoded a lot over the past 4 or 5 years. I have one weird advantage in that because flow optimizes. When we talk about flow as optimal performance, what does it actually optimize? It optimizes motivation, productivity, learning and memory, creativity and innovation, empathy and environmental awareness, cooperation, collaboration, and grit, a couple other things. Well, the point is, to be an expert in flow, I need to be an expert in the big picture. Yeah. What happened over the past 5 years is the science underneath the big picture got done, and I went, oh my God, it's a sequence. It's a system. It's the whole thing's tied together. And we hadn't seen it before. And because I have this big, wide view based on flow, I was one of the first people who saw it and realized that, hey, wait a minute, it all works in a system and in order, and it's designed to work as a system in an order. And if you get it right, you get massive acceleration. So that was one, right? Because the science finally caught up. The second one is this. I have spent my career sort of studying those moments when the impossible became possible in every domain imaginable. Sports, science, technology, art. I've done a lot of work on the disruptive technology side, and because of the work with Peter Diamandis and Singularity University, I have had this amazingly kind of privileged view of meeting all these phenomenal, wonderful people with change the world ambitions and change the world skills, right? People who could really make a huge difference. The ones who succeed, I've written about them. We all know them because I've written about them in 13 or 12 books. That's only a tiny percentage of the people I've met. And when I've met hundreds of thousands of people with save the world ideas, save the world potential, like the real deal, and they kept tripping over themselves. And it wasn't the entrepreneurial stuff. It wasn't the business stuff. It wasn't the stuff that you would think that was tripping people up. It was the very sort of foundational, basic biology of peak human performance. I don't know how to end starvation in Africa. I don't know how to, deal with arsenic in wells in India. Those are not my areas of expertise. But how to keep people from tripping over themselves and how to get people using all of their biology so it's doing all the hard work for them rather than against them, that is expertise I actually have. And that's why I got tired of, the world needs all of us right now more than ever. Yeah. I never wanted to write a how-to book. This was the least flowy book I ever wrote. It was grind it out inch by inch by inch, And I did it, in a sense, because I got really tired of watching people who the planet really needs not be able to kind of, fulfill their potential for really not easy, but from where I sit, obvious, right? They're not, none of this stuff if you read The Art Impossible as you did, there's no like, oh my God, this is so crazy. I never, like, it's stuff you kind of know, or maybe and you just didn't put it together. This is how this works with this and this and this. Most people are doing some of this stuff, not all of it. And the formula, when you put it all together, is what sort of makes it a lot more doable for everybody. And it was time. It was, you know what I mean? Like every now and again, you do one for everybody else. I had sort of written maybe a bunch for me. You know what I mean? I've written a couple novels. Novels are very much for me, right? It was time to write something for all of us again, I think.
I love that, to write something for all of us. And when I read this book, I got a few hits. First was, read this book if you believe that there is a life awaiting you that is bigger than the one you're living. The second is, get this book for anybody that you actually believe in, because this book will push them where you can't. And the third was a whole generation of young leaders who are probably overwhelmed and mentally overtaxed and fatigued with the proliferation of technology and social media. What is your greatest hope if we could get this book in the hands of all these kind of young leaders and global shapers? What do you hope this book does?
Well, so I'm super excited about what this book does one, I'm super excited about what this book does for women, and I'm super excited about what this book does for young leaders. And because these are two categories of people who, because of the nature of how the world has been, haven't had a chance to really step up to the plate and deliver. And with young leaders, the problem isn't that they will, sooner or later, everybody learns this stuff the hard way. If you're going to succeed in the world, you're going to have to learn this stuff. The problem is with a lot of young leaders is by the time they get to this stuff, they're in their 40s and their 50s, and they're no longer young leaders. So that it's taking too long. So what I want to do is really shorten the developmental curve for everybody, but for young leaders especially, because you're going to face all the entrepreneurial challenges. They're hard. As a guy who's been involved in 22 different startups over a lot of years, they're hard, right? Those things don't change, but that's not what crushes startups. You know what crushes the vast majority of startups? The grit at the fourth failure. That's where most startups die. First problem, big problem. Oh, okay, it's a problem, we'll solve it. Second problem, oh, it's a problem, we'll solve it. This is harder. Third one, oh, wow, this isn't really fun running this company on it. But the fourth one is you go, oh, wow, problem solving is the job. Yeah. And that's when most people come unhinged. That's where most things go away. And that is a problem of lining up curiosity, passion, and purpose. Yeah. Autonomy and mastery. It's how you built the job, and you don't have the right grit skills, and it just defeats you. You're like, oh my God, I just got my ass kicked. And you didn't. You actually just hit a standard in entrepreneurial developmental, like this is what happens, right? This is the first place most people fail. The next place most people fail is the scaling problem, right? How do I keep up with the growth of my company? That's about a year later. But those are the two biggest fail points in entrepreneurship. And the first one is entirely a human problem. It's not actually about business or entrepreneurship. It's just about, oh, wow, this is harder than I thought and less fun than I thought, and I may not have the skills to meet the challenge. And it turns out you really do have the skills, right? And they're not even that hard. It's just understanding, hey, these are what they are. This is the sequence. This is how they work. If you can start training the levels of grit now, right, before you actually get into your first entrepreneur, right, before those issues show up, this problem isn't even going to be a problem. Yeah. You're not even going to notice. The fourth issue is going to come. It's going to go. You'll be on to the fifth and sixth, and suddenly you're running a company, and right, because you're having grit problems. You're not actually having entrepreneurial company problems. You're just going to blame it on the entrepreneurial company problem stuff. until you get into your 40s and 50s and go, oh wow, that was a grip problem. I didn't realize that was that issue, and I would like to circumvent that issue because we need young leaders. I mean, good God, more than ever, right? We need more voices in the global conversation, and making a difference. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about what this book. And I'll give you a concrete, real world example. Yeah. In action sports, which is I studied a lot of flow in action sports, and in skateboarding, because skateboarding is so violent, meaning like you fail all the time, and when you fail in skateboarding, you fall on concrete, right? You fall on pavement, and it's painful, and so the learning curve is really steep. And in skateboarding, they started coaching kids earlier than they did in a lot of other action sports. In weird ways, and they started training kids in focus and flow very early. What happened? You routinely see 13 and 14-year-old skaters winning the X Games, beating 30 and 40-year-olds. Doesn't happen in a lot of other sports categories, but it's one where kind of strength and some of the advantages that come on in later life don't make as much. Things are a little more equal, and they started teaching kids the simple mental skills to go along with the physical stuff. Simply because skateboarding is so damn hard and painful, it just started happening. And so what you really see is, oh my God, there's massive progression available to each and every one of us with just a handful of these things. And the biggest problem, and it's also that the other thing for young leaders, because I meet so many of these people, and much more than sort of my generation, are very much on a personal development journey. They get that part of it, but they don't yet have the discernment, right? There are great books on focus, or there's great books on grit, or mindfulness, or gratitude, or flow, right? All the different pieces written by brilliant experts, where their depth of knowledge is far, you know what I mean? Scott Barry Kaufman has forgotten more about the science of creativity than I'm probably ever going to know. But how that science of creativity fits in with the entire peak performance picture, that happens to be the sliver that I've got. I think a lot of the young entrepreneurs, one, they can't really discern between what is kind of new age, what is actually science-based, all that stuff. So one, I kind of, by putting it all out there so you can see the whole system, hopefully you'll have a little more tools for discernment so you can pick and choose. And two, when you understand how the whole system works together, then you can start reaching, oh, wow, I've got a weakness here on flow, so maybe I should read these other books, right? Yeah. Right. But once you have the whole big picture, you can start to see where you need to grow, and then all those other books become really, really useful. But on the front end, like if you're just coming in and you're like, okay, it's self-improvement, I need to be a better leader to run my company, where the hell are you going to start? Right?
Yeah. I mean, I've read dozens of them, and you piecemeal them together and you try to make sense of it. What I really appreciated about The Art of Impossible, it was the first time where I was like, oh, this is actually the holy grail of learning thyself. This is the book that I want to gift to all of my students, to everyone I believe in, because if you can understand this foundationally, you can apply it to every part of your life. So it's not just peak performance in your career, it's peak performance in your evolution.
So I gotta say, this is a book about the art of impossible, right? And
yeah.
It's a book, lessons learned from people who have gone after what I call capital I impossible, that which has never been done. But it's really about how do you accomplish small I impossible. Small I impossible is that which you believe is impossible for you. And I always think that the first small I impossible that most people go after is how do you get your first boyfriend or girlfriend, right? That's not, it's really funny, but like usually, right, what's the first thing where you're like, oh my God, I'm desperate for this thing. I have to have this thing. It's going to kill me. I'm going to die if I don't get this thing. And I don't know how to do it. I have no skills. There's no small I impossible. I define those things that are we believe impossible for us, and what that really means is things where you're at point A, you want to get to point B, there's no clear path, right? That's one of the core features of the impossible. There's no clear path between point A and point B. And statistically, there's not such great odds as success, right? And this could be overcoming trauma, rising out of poverty, learning how to get paid to do what you love. Huge impossible that we are all going to face. In fact, it's worth talking about that one because there's a bunch of stuff that comes out of adult development that says, look, if you can't figure out how to get paid doing what you love by the time you're about 40, you're kind of screwed after that. Like emotionally, you're going to have a very hard time enjoying the second half of your life. And considering that our lives are getting longer and longer and longer, that's a really serious thing. That's kind of a funny one. But that's a small impossible. But I really do think that the first impossible that most people go after is, how do I get a boyfriend? How do I get a girlfriend? How do I get a first kiss? How do I get laid for the first time? Right? Those are all the first impossibles we all had to solve in our lives. And right?
Yeah, and that was one of my favorite concepts of the book. It's like the compound effect of those small I's leading to the big I. And what I appreciate about you is you don't straddle this line between woo-woo and science. You actually lead with science and truth, and it speaks to the spiritual world. But it's very tangible and it's very real. And I wonder, is that something that you've has that been your North Star in watching all of these, from Navy SEALs to Olympic athletes to extreme athletes? Are they more anchored in the grounded truth of things, or do you see them as pursuing kind of the ephemeral?
You would be shocked by how much pursuit of the ephemeral there is in all peak performance communities, one way or the other.
Interesting.
Now, what the SEALs would not tell you that they're going after spiritual things, but there are ephemeral things that they're going after that are very much so. My interest is in science for two reasons. One, not everybody knows this, but I started out on the spiritual side. I spent years living in monasteries, ashrams, doing every psychedelic known. Like, that's where I started this. And when none of it worked, when I could sit in the full lotus for 7-8 hours at a time and meditate, and it never got me A to B. It didn't fix any of the stuff inside myself that I was trying to work. Like, it didn't work. And then that's when I started really diving into the science. So now I always say, what works for me is not going to all guarantee to work for you. So that just happens to be my journey. The reason the science matters to me is twofold. One, it's a common language.
Yeah.
If I want to train you in peak performance using spirituality, whose language do I use? Because the Tibetan white lineage Buddhists have some really interesting things to say, but they say it a very specific way. And if I'm trying to communicate with a Christian soccer mom from Iowa, putting it in Tibetan Tantric Buddhist language, even though that's a language I can speak, is not very useful. Science is a common language globally. I want a way to be able to communicate this stuff with everybody, and I want everybody more specifically to be able to communicate with me. The whole point is, let's train everybody up to get this level, and let's take the conversation further together. Science is the language we share, first of all. Second of all, as I said before, peak performance is nothing more than getting our biology work for us rather than against us. And if you want to understand how that biology works, science is the common language of that as well. And so it works very well for that. And it's also, most people are very intimidated by science one way or another. They don't realize that science is nothing more or less than a voyage of discovery. Somebody had a question. They answered the question. It led to another question. They answered that question. It led to another. That's all we're talking about here. That's every experience anybody on this planet has ever had. You had a question. You went out, got an answer. You had another question, and you went. That's what science is. The difference is that it takes a whole bunch of people getting the same answer before we agree on it. That's the only difference. Yeah. Right? And as a result, it can work for more people. That's the other thing that matters.
Yeah, was reminded when I was reading the book of how much I wish this book existed when I was working in corporate ad sales in media in New York City. And if only the whole sales team could have been gifted this book as part of like a sales summit or a book club, then we all would have had the same universal language of growth.
Yes.
And
yes.
that would have cut through so much politics, so much bullshit.
Yeah.
Like
yeah. People are very, like, we don't like to admit this about ourselves because it's humbling. But I say this, and I think last time I was ever with one of my novels, is that humans are such simple toys.
Yeah.
And we really actually are fairly simple toys. And when you kind of understand how things work, you don't get caught. You don't start ascribing me, oh, this is politics, this is culture, this is blood. No, it's actually just really simple biology. It's really simple kind of foundational hardwiring. And it does cut through so much nonsense. And what I think it does is people stop taking things personally. Yeah. You don't have to take all this stuff. Or be like, oh, this is just biology. I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not a bad person, or you're not a bad person. This is just how we are hardwired as human beings, and let's work with what we right. Oh, okay. It's very liberating and freeing.
Yeah.
I think, and it takes a lot of the weight and the shame and the blame away.
Totally.
It's not, you don't need it.
Yeah, I felt like this was a built-in emotional intelligence primer for the peak performance primer. Whether that was the intention or not, I don't think you can reach peak performance without having an elevated training of emotional intelligence. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, no. And there's a whole section in the book on emotional intelligence. And if for no other reason, like I always put this in the most mercenary way possible. This is often good when communicating with like type A Wall Street people.
Mm-hmm.
Men on type A Wall Street, man. But between you and your dreams, other people lie. Like there's you don't get to your dream. I've spent my life studying people who've achieved their goals.
Yeah.
Nobody went solo. You just even the most solo thing I know of. I've talked to you about my friend Mike Horn, the polar adventurer.
Yeah.
He's the toughest guy on the planet.
Yeah.
So Mike circumnavigated the Arctic Circle at night by himself. Right, walked in the darkest months of the year around the Arctic Circle. It was the first time anybody ever did it. It's the most solo thing anybody can do. Do you think he got there on him? He had a huge backup organization that allowed Mike Horn to do it. Do you know how many people had to work together so Mike Horn could walk around? Right. So even the most solo, impossible challenge, it's all collaborative, one way or another. It's all got to be. You can't get to any high hard goals, or very few, completely on your own. And emotional intelligence, if for no other reason, then you're going to need to work with other people just to accomplish your super selfish aims. You need it. Forget everything else, and of course everything else is hugely important. But as from a really hardcore, just mercenary Wall Street, you've got to know how other people work, because they're standing between you and where you want to go.
So I want to end it on a personal note, which I know you love these. What is your version of becoming the impossible for you, Stephen Kotler? What is the big I that you have yet to reach?
Oh, personally, my big I?
Yeah.
Well, there's two big I's that really matter to me the most. One is kind of completely decoding the neurobiology of flow, and we the field of flow scientists, and we the Flow Research Collective, where we actually work on this, are much farther along than we've ever been before, but I don't think it's solved yet, and that means there's more to learn about human peak performance. So that's one. And two, my big I've always been about the same thing, which is empathy for all, empathy for plants, animals, and ecosystems, not just all people, but empathy for plants, animals, and ecosystems. I want to make the world a better place for plants, animals, and ecosystems. To me, they're the ultimate underdog. I like Dr. Seuss. I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees because the trees have no tongues, right?
Yeah.
I sort of like, I would never, I don't speak for the trees. I'm not that arrogant. I can't speak for the trees, right? They're plenty fine without me. But, Richard Powers did a really good job in the Oprah story, and I think he spoke for the trees probably better than I could. But my point is those are the two impossibles that I care about. How to make the world a better place for plants, animals, and ecosystems.
Yeah.
And, how do we decode the neurobiology? Well, both of those are impossibles that I haven't done yet. And also, how do you write a really, really, really good novel? I'm not sure I've done that yet. I've tried it 5 times, but I'm not sure. I spent maybe the most recent one, which you and I got to work on.
Yeah, I would say that one was really good.
Let's see what happens in the world. Maybe I got there, but it really feels like I've tried this thing 5 times. Each time I try it, it's a year to 10 years worth of effort, and I still So that's one where I'm like, well, this is a personal small lie impossible, but God damn it, I want it. I'm mad.
How do you know that you will have succeeded? What's the KPI? Is it an award? Is it?
That's interesting. I don't actually know. Yeah, what I think is this. I want to be able to go back to the book 5 years after I wrote it and find far more to like about it than dislike it. So I don't it's funny. I like very few of my books. There are a couple of my books where I'm like, oh, this is a really good book. Rise of Superman to me is a really good book. Meaning when I pick it up, I can open it up and start reading, and I'll read for 3 or 4 chapters, and I'll be entertained by my own writing almost every time. So but not every one of my books does that for me. I think that would be the metric, honestly. There might be some win this award or do this, and you know what I mean? And maybe that'll do it. But I honestly think it's that I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to find more to like than dislike 4 or 5 years afterwards. And I think that might be the measure for success. I don't know. It's a hard question. Yeah. So you can ask me again in a year or so. Maybe I'll have a different answer. That's my answer right now.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. That gives me a lot of food for thought. Stephen, this has been such a joy. I have a lot more questions than I have answers, which is always the case with you. And I feel like we could talk for hours. But what I want to say to anyone listening is, this book is unlike anything I've read. It's unlike anything Stephen's ever written. So it's worth checking out. And I'll send all the links with this email. But I'm so thrilled that we got to connect on this. And we'll also be following up with an understanding of what exactly is included in the $1,500 of free training, which is just mind-blowing. If you think about it, you're giving a book as the breadcrumb to open the door of becoming the impossible.
2 things.
What?
2 things on that one. I know we're going to talk about it later, but one, so for example, one of the things you get is a course called Distraction Disruptor. Yeah. And it's because there are things in Art of Impossible that one of the good things about the Flow Research Collective is, yes, we study the science on the front end. We also train 1,000 people a month. Yeah. And that gives us, I don't think there's a larger peak performance training organization in the world right now. So the shit is battle tested. And so what have I learned along the way? There's a couple things missing from Art of the Impossible. Also, some of this stuff, the Distraction Disruptor course, for example, distraction management is a real problem for people. I talk about focus in the book. We do some of that stuff, but this was a fail point for clients or customers for way more. So why did we include that? Because the whole point is I want people to come out the other side of this really dangerous. Yeah. I think the world needs all of us right now. So the book is a great starting point. Here's some other stuff to also help you level up your game. That's why we chose what we're giving away. Also, the other thing is, as you know, I'm one of the people who helped kind of pioneer the idea of pre-sale campaigns. Tim really started it. But a bunch of us sort of carried it forward. And I've always felt that most of the stuff people are giving away in pre-sale campaigns are either they're sort of celebrity, oh, come hang out with me, and that sort of stuff. And it's not how I'm wired. Right? And the other thing is, most of you don't really want to come hang out with me. You think you do, but you don't. and I'm trying to save you from that. No, but I wanted to give away stuff that actually was like real. I have an allergy to fake marketing. You know what I mean? To anything marketing, but I've got no problem with the absolute truth. Like, I wanted to create the best, most kick-ass pre-sale campaign where I could look at it and be like, yeah, buy the book, and we're going to give you $1,500 worth of stuff, and it's legit. You know, I'm really proud of it. I'm like, okay, yeah. People worked on the stuff that we're giving away for years to develop, and it's not something that, like, I cooked up with a marketing team over a weekend to sell books. It was stuff that, like, the best peak performance minds on the planet worked on some of this stuff for years to create. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And I will say, having gone through one of your trainings in the middle of a pandemic was a sanity saver, and it was a creative catalyst. So the fact that you're giving away free trainings on top of giving the book, that's like the holy grail of becoming the impossible, to me makes you like a hero of 2021. Thank you for existing. Thank you for sharing. And it's too much love your way. I know this makes you uncomfortable. You might have an allergic reaction. But seriously, you're one of my favorite humans in the world, and I just think this legitimately is a book that could change society if we really took this seriously. If we started book clubs inside of our teams, our corporations, if you bought one for your best friend and you bought one for you, and you just decided that 2021 was going to be different, and now you have a map, an actual like treasure map, to become the person who you know is inside, and to become the person who's bigger than what you know. Because I think so much of, you know, the mix between the science and the ephemeral is the unknown. What could you become if you actually had a formula for becoming? So that's a lot of words, I know, but I just fucking believe in this book, and I want it in every hand in America. So if you want more information, finish reading this email, and there will be 2 links. And I am so thrilled that we got to connect today, my friend. Thank you for writing this book. Thank you for pouring your heart and soul, decades of experience, into a book that I'm sure wasn't always fun to write, because you wanted to write a novel, but you did a book for the people, and the people are going to be very grateful to you. So thank you.
You were totally welcome. Thank you. That was really sweet.
It was delightful. And we will put a pin in it. All right. I was like, we'll do 3 5-minute videos. But it's just so hard with us because we flow really well. And so what I decided like 7 minutes in was either I would cut it up into a few different videos, or I would just have one video and send it to everyone, because it really covers the whole gamut.
I just had to text Ryan and tell him that I was
being, yeah.
That actually flowed together. I thought it was.
Yeah. I thought it was more sincere this way.
You know the audiences that you're trying to reach.
Yep.
And I think you did more hard selling than I did.
Well, that's the point. Yeah. That's the point.
That was the point.
If you have the purple-haired girl selling hard, and then you have like the pro writer selling soft, you come to this middle point where people are like, oh man, maybe I should buy this book.
See, I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Good job.
Lots of purple-haired women
touting you. I feel like I'm your hype man. I'm the AOI hype man, hype woman.
I have, like, it's super funny. I said this to somebody recently. They asked me, they're like, what are the secrets to your success? Blah, blah, one of those questions. And I was like, I'm going to give you one of the secrets to my success, and you won't get it. And they were like, okay, because I was talking about it, I was like, I love powerhouse women. And it turns out they like me. And if you think men will do something to help you in your career,
you haven't.
You have no idea how the world works, and you have no idea how the game is played.
Oh, yeah.
Go someplace fast and far, and with far less work and headache. Team up with powerhouse women. Flat out.
I love it.
No, like literally, I look at men And I look at the organizations they build, and I think, you guys are fucking morons. You guys are fucking morons. You're building organizations with people who are inherently selfish.
Yes.
And you're going to get, like, you're getting Enron, and you're wondering why.
Yeah.
Why are we getting Enron? Well.
And then it's like ego, big dick swinging contest, ego, big dick swinging. It's like, how many levels of this? How many repetitions do you need before you understand that, like.
The other thing is also, like, what I really hate is when women come in and start trying to play like the man. Right?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, God. Fuck, I fucking hate alpha men. Now I have to deal with like women who are trying to be fake out. Like, oh my god, because the men aren't even alphas. I laugh so fucking hard when I go to Wall Street. They're like, be careful, it's a room full of alphas. And I'm like, you guys wouldn't know a fucking room full
You're
of
betas.
Like, you think you're alpha? Like, you know what an alpha looks like? This is what an alpha looks like. An alpha looks like me. That's what an alpha looks like. How do I know I'm an alpha? Because when I walk into this room, every guy in this room is going to come at me. I'm not going to come at any of them, and I'm not going to care.
Because you're not threatened.
They're all going to spend the rest of the night trying to prove that they're more of a badass than I am, and I am going to care less because I know I'm the biggest badass in the room. That's the difference.
The biggest badass in the room.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
How are you going to measure that? Are you going to measure it by the best mind? Okay, I'm probably going to win, or I'm going to be in the top. Are you going to measure it by who's going to go home with the most attractive woman in the room? It's going to be me, because I'm the most interesting and fun guy in the room. And if you can make women laugh and see them and hear them, they're going to fuck you. Yep. So, like anything you're going to measure out the status with.
They think about it financially. How much can you provide for your woman? You got that.
Yeah, I got that. And you want to think about it athletically? I got that. You want to think about it in terms of a measure of toughness? No, I've broken more bones and dealt with more diseases than you will ever fucking imagine. Yep. Right? You want to deal with it in story. Like, I will win in every category, and I don't give a flying fuck. I really don't want to win. I don't care. I don't have to be anything in any room. I'm really happy if somebody else is center stage and I can just watch. But
that's what a true alpha is. And the betas that want to be alphas misconstrue what that attitude is of an alpha. Like, a real alpha just does not give a fuck because they're so secure in what they bring to the table that they don't even need to impress or entertain anyone. But when I know the difference between an alpha wannabe and an alpha, because an alpha wannabe is hard overcompensating for the fact that they're really a beta on the inside.
No, I will say one thing. Tim did something the first time I met him that made me think, oh, wow, you're actually a real alpha, even though you pretend to be a beta alpha. Like,
what did he do?
He actually misinterpreted what was going on, but his reaction to the misinterpretation was so cute and sweet that when I met Tim, I wanted to talk to him about something, and I don't remember what it was, and it wasn't even that I got breathy, it was like I got tongue-tied trying to think about something, and he thought it was I got nervous around him, and that he was going to run away, right? And he basically looked at me and was like, no, just take your time, it's fine. Like, something like that. Yeah. What he did. And it wasn't where I was coming from. Yeah. Actually what was going on, but I saw it and I went, oh, okay. It was the first time I actually took Tim seriously, was that moment. I was like, oh, you're not just Tim and I think, have actual true, like, he has actual problems with me because... Yeah,
why the fuck isn't he letting you on the podcast?
He has never... So here's what I think it is. I think in the beginning, Tim didn't trust me.
Okay.
And I don't blame him, right? Like, I was suddenly the flow guy at, like, blah, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't know anything about me, and there are a lot of pretenders in the world.